The great thing about Occupy Wall Street is there's a lot in it for a lot of different interests. And I think a lot of people are looking to May 1st as a kind of moment to re-plug into this movement and to find out what they've decided as a collective to be about. I think that what we're going to see actually is the same flowering of many, many, many different blossoms with different focuses and one message, which is we need to reclaim and occupy not one given agenda, but our lives.
That's a good point. And as journalists, we look for stories that are micro stories that tell the macro. So we look for stories that tell the story of America as a whole. And I think in the beginning, Occupy Wall Street did that very well. Although as we went through the winter and they hibernated, I think they lost track, and I'm not quite sure if they're telling that story of America anymore.
There's something here, and it's not an easy story for us in the media to tell because it doesn't have a beginning, middle, end, a leader, a conflict, a resolution. It's a story of a society that I think is in trouble, and at a deep level, Occupy is talking to that in trouble in the way that it expresses itself in so many different parts of our lives. There's something that continues to attract people to this Occupy concept, and I think it goes back to this notion of we want to, with greater integrity, occupy our lives.
The problem, though, is for more Americans to glob onto this, it's got to resemble something. Right now, and since the inception of this, it hasn't resembled anything. I don't know how many times we've asked people, who's the leader? When is a leader going to emerge? And the answer was always, we don't work that way. And so how is this going to work itself out if they continue to be this amorphous thing?
I think it's working its way out. Right here in Zuccotti Park, where we're talking, we saw relationships get built between students and homeless people, between young people fighting student debt and homeless kids fighting for homes. Together over the last 4 months, they've been figuring out, well, what's the relationship between the foreclosure crisis, which was a matter of predatory lending in many cases, and the student loan crisis, which similarly is, in many people's views, the result of predatory lending to students, such that you now have 1 in 3 African American kids getting out of college owing more than $48,000 a year. You have $1 trillion of debt being held by students who are able to sign up for student debt before they can even be old enough to buy a beer. There are connections being made. And again, it's not just conceptual connections. The thing about Occupy is it created a place where you and I could make a human connection.
You know, you brought up a good point about the message, because as we travel through the holiday season and this past winter, I don't know how many holiday dinners I sat with family members at where they were saying, this Occupy thing, you know, if they would just adopt a singular, clear message, and maybe it's make the rich pay more, they felt that more and more people could grab onto that message. But Occupy has resisted that. Do you think it's paid off?
Well, you could say, I mean, we'll find out. If Occupy, if these issues haven't moved at all over the next year, we'll say, you know, it was a flash in the pan. But I think the question of poverty and wealth has got onto the front page of the newspapers in a way it never did before. Occupy changed the conversation at those dinner tables.
Yeah, you're right.
It got a lot of people working on things they'd never worked on before, and it introduced a lot of people to each other.
Never before in the news have we talked about income equality.
Not this much. I wonder how many people, as a result of thinking about this stuff, have gotten themselves involved, whether they feel they were led by Occupy or not, or felt they were doing what they wish Occupy had done. I think they're getting to the same place.
If you could push Occupy in one direction or another, what would it be?
I think they're doing the right thing. In terms of demands, 1, 2, 3, it has to come organically. If it's all imposed from the top, it's only ever going to appeal to those who feel like signing on a bottom line. I think we're seeing the very beginning of something, and May Day is a historic celebration. It's a day that has been marked for decades all around the world. It represents the history of working people's movements globally, and in just making us think about the centuries in which people have marked this day of workers' rights. It reminds us that all these struggles are not completed in a day or even the span of a generation. These are long-term struggles, and thank heavens we're talking about this stuff now.